Hey, we're here again at Discount Water Softeners to talk about the installation instructions and setup of your cabinet-style water softener system. When you receive your cabinet-style water softener, you will receive your resin tank in a separate box from the actual cabinet. To unbox the resin tank, you want to make sure that removing it, you actually remove the temporary shipping cap so that you can use the top of the tank as a handle. To remove the resin tank from the box, it's best to cut the side of the box open first, and then use the open tank as a handle to lift and pull the tank out. Keep in mind, there won't be a tank base on this tank, so you will need to prop it up somewhere until you can get it into the cabinet. Once you've unboxed the cabinet from the two boxes, you want to ensure that you received your small parts bag for the brine assembly, as well as the overflow elbow that will attach to the back corner of the cabinet. Inside the bottom of your cabinet, you'll also find the safety float assembly. This will get installed after your resin tank has been placed inside of the cabinet. When installing the resin tank inside of the cabinet, it is a good idea to either have an assistant to help you or to install it at an angle, because the resin tank is going to be extremely heavy because it will be loaded with resin. To do this, you want to make sure that you have the cap off of the resin tank, and with both hands either lift up the resin tank and drop it down into the cabinet carefully, or you can lay this down at an angle, carefully making sure that you don't spill any of the resin out of the resin tank. Once you've got your resin tank inside the cabinet, you're going to need to angle the base. To do so, you want to lift up on the tank and angle it towards the back of the cabinet. And then you can simply just slide the tank into place and it'll be secure in the area where it needs to be placed. Once you've installed the resin tank into the bottom portion of your cabinet, you're going to need to install the middle portion of the top of the cabinet. To do this, you're going to first need to install the brine well into the bottom portion of the cabinet. You can simply just place the middle portion on top without securing it, and then you want to remove the float assembly from the brine well. You'll do this by removing the small plastic screw and then pulling the entire float assembly out of the brine well. Next, you're going to drop the brine well down into the bottom portion of the cabinet. Now on your 48,000 grain, you're going to place it in the front position, which is position B. If you're at 32,000 grain, you're going to place the brine well in the back corner, which is the A position. Then you're able to slide your middle gray portion down onto the cabinet. After securing the middle gray plate into the bottom cabinet along with the brine well, you're going to drop the float assembly back into place and re-secure the nut onto the float assembly to complete the installation. Now we're ready to move on to the control valve installation onto the tank. Inside the bottom portion of the cabinet style system that you purchased, you will find any of the accessories along with the control head in a separate box. After you've assembled your cabinet and put your tank into place, you're ready to install the control valve. For the Fleck 5600, you're simply going to need to install the upper screen onto the bottom portion of the control valve. To do so, you're going to simply slide the upper screen into place and then turn it about 1/4 inch and it'll lock into place. You're now ready to place the control valve on top of the tank. When installing the Fleck 5600 control valve onto your cabinet style water softener, your center riser tube may be slightly off center and you will need to get it to the center position to slide the upper screen and then control valve down onto the tank. Once your system goes into its first regeneration, the center tube will self-correct. When tightening the control valve down onto the tank, you may want to have an assistant help you to hold the resin tank in place underneath the cabinet to ensure that you get a nice snug connection. Tightening down to hand tighten and then another half turn to ensure that your tank compresses the O-ring and you have a good solid connection. All of the Fleck water softeners that we sell come with a stainless steel bypass. By pushing the bypass straight onto the back of the control valve, you will then move your clips into place and incrementally tighten each side down equally to ensure that the connection is secure. If you over tighten these connections, you will crack the meter assembly. Be sure to only snug up the connections. There will be some play in the connection once the bypass is attached, so be aware that that is normal to see in your installation. After your bypass is installed, you will also receive a drain line hose barb fitting that has a 1/2-inch hose barb fitting on the end. If you decide to use our drain tubing option or purchase locally some 1/2-inch stiff wall drain tubing, you can put some Teflon tape on this fitting and screw it into the control valve. If you elect to not use the hose barb fitting, you can directly connect hard pipe connections to this control valve. You will also receive 2 male-to-male connectors. It is recommended that you use thread compound or pipe dope to make your connection from metal to metal threaded connectors. From there, you're able to connect our Quick Pro connector kit, where you can either use thread compound or Teflon tape to make your connection to the supply and to the return. You want to make sure, especially on copper, that there aren't any sharp edges or burrs on the end of your copper that could pierce or cut the O-ring on the inside of the quick connector. To make your connection, you're simply going to push this up into your plumbing until it bottoms out, and then make sure you can't pull down on it. You're also going to want to make the same connection to your outlet side of your system and make your connection the same way as you did on your supply line. To make the brine line connection to the Fleck 5600 on your cabinet style water softener, the small parts bag for your brine line connection has a brass nut that will get first slid onto your tubing. Then you will have a compression ring that slides on with the taper facing towards the control valve. Your brass tube insert will go into the end of the tubing next, and your screen will go into that. Your assembly will look just like this. You can push the screen in, push your brine tubing all the way into the brass fitting till it bottoms out, lower your compression fitting down, and then your compression nut. Tighten it down until it's hand tight and snug it up with a wrench, making sure that you can't pull the tubing out. On the other end, you're going to take the tubing and insert it into the safety float assembly, which is simply a quick connect fitting. You're going to push the tubing in until it bottoms out. You'll hear a click and your connection's complete. The final step of your cabinet installation requires that you add the cover to your system. You simply slide it over the top. Once it clicks into place, your system is installed. To fill salt on this model, you'll simply slide the cover back and add salt through the front portion. There's also a clear lid where you can raise it up to make any changes to your control head or do any manual regenerations.
All you have to do is simply push the up and the down arrows at the same time until you see DO14. That's your day override. If your water softener does not regenerate based on gallons, within 14 days, it will regenerate anyway. We highly recommend leaving it at 14 days so that your water softener regenerates at least every 2 weeks. Going any longer can lead to issues. Next setting is your regeneration time. Most everyone would want to have a 2 a.m. regeneration time. That's the least likely time you would be using water. If you need to change it because your schedule is different, of course, you can change that by using the up or the down arrows, but it is set at 2 a.m. coming from the factory. The next setting is your H setting, which is your hardness. This is a number that is almost certainly going to have to be changed when you receive your system. You're going to program your hardness to whatever your water hardness is coming into the home. If you also have iron in your water, you're going to add 5 to this setting for every part per million of iron that you have. So if you had a hardness of 20 and your iron is 1 part per million, you're going to set your hardness number to 25. And if you had 2 parts per million of iron, you would set it to 30. But if your hardness is different than 20, obviously you're going to add it to the number that you have for your hardness. Reserve capacity is 150. That is good for pretty much most size homes. Reserve capacity is basically an additional 150 gallons of soft water that you will have left on your size system, even when you get to zero. So when the meter reads zero, you actually really have another 150 gallons of soft water that fits most homes, anywhere from 1 to 5 people. And then back to the time of day. Something to note here is this other number of 1050. That number is going to change according to what your hardness is and your capacity is of your system. So once you program in your hardness, that number, let's say, is 1050. Every gallon that you use, it's going to deduct from that display. So it's going to just switch from time of day to number of gallons left until regeneration. So that number is going to change. And then once it regenerates, it'll go back up to the number that you're going to start at each time a new regeneration is completed. Thanks so much and have a great day.